Hello, welcome to Betfair's Cricket Trade Talk. I'm Tom Haylock, joined by Darren Parkin. How are you, mate?
Going very well. Great start for the Aussies to the summer, defeating India in the World Test Championship final. But it's hard not to think we're at the big one now. It was as much as it was a grand final, it was a warm-up to the main event.
Yes, and we've got a special guest, Andrew Mensell. Hope that I got that right.
You did.
Affectionately known as Menners. Great to have you here. Talk to us about what you do with yourself. You have a podcast you've been doing for a long time now.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, thanks for having me on your show. Yeah, I've been hosting the Cricket Unfiltered podcast since 2013, so 10 years of podcasting. And I'm also a commentator for Cricket Australia and Cricket New South Wales. And I just am a little bit of a cricket obsessive.
Cricket nuffy.
It's hard to sleep on the eve of an Ashes tour or an Ashes series. Very exciting.
How good is it? It's great to have you here. It's good to have an expert in the house, Darren. Someone who's been doing it for 10 years. It's great to have him here. So you're obviously a massive cricket fan. Cricket Unfiltered, we'll give that a plug. Tune in. You're doing the podcast throughout the series?
That's right. We'll be doing daily wraps and also previewing and reviewing each test match. A pretty heavy schedule, but so exciting to talk about a marquee test series.
How much are you going to sleep over the next 5.5, 6 weeks?
My sleep patterns are destroyed already from the World Test Championship. So, yeah, going to be some bags under the eyes for the Ashes, but well worth it.
Yes. Now, what do we make of the World Test Championship final? We'll start with you, Menners. Obviously, Australia, dominant display, really. And the beauty of Betfair as well, they were 3 for 340 odd after day one. Australia only firmed 10 cents in betting. And the draw, obviously, was heavily backed, and we were heavily against the draw, and we talked about that much, Darren. But we're here for the Ashes, but that was a good lead-up for Australia.
Yeah, really good lead-up for Australia heading into the summer to get some miles into the legs of the fast bowlers, get the batters used to the pitches, because normally there's not a lot of lead into a test series now. So we've actually had a warm-up game that doubled as a world championship. And it's also a great confidence builder, I think, for this team and Pat Cummins' leadership to be world test champions on the eve of the Ashes. And sort of reflected on the last 2 years since Pat Cummins was given the job on the eve of the home Ashes, where Payne had to withdraw. And it was a lot thrown on him at the last minute. He had no captaincy experience. He's a fast bowler, which is a really tough thing to do.
It's faux pas in Australian folklore, really.
Very rare, yeah.
And I still don't think it's a good idea. No, I don't. I really don't. I think you can see at times when the pressure is on us in the field, he can struggle. And
I'm going to talk about that too. Part of the series, I think we will get pressured at various times throughout the series. So it is going to be really interesting to see how he stacks up as captain. You would have been happy with Australia,
Absolutely, yeah. You've got to go back, I think, to the 60s to find 50s or 60s to find fast bowlers captaining Australia long-term prior to that. But, yeah, a really good result. And as Menners said, obviously, with the schedule being as jammed as it has been in recent years, usually travelling teams don't get a lead-in match, maybe one first-class match, which could be washed out. I mean, back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, you might spend nearly a month in England before the first test and play a lot of that cricket. And I wonder whether that's contributed a bit to the dominant home record in the Ashes over the last couple of decades. So it's a really good hit out that Australia got a full match in against a very good team at a ground they're going to play at later in the series at the Oval. So I think it can only serve us well.
Yes, spot on. And obviously India looked a bit out of whack. 14 of the 15 players coming off IPL series straight into a test match. They didn't look like they hit their straps.
No, you could tell with their bowlers, they really struggled to find a consistent length. And in 20-over cricket, you want to bowl with variety. You don't want, you want every ball to be different. So you could, a big challenge for them switching from IPL to a test match. And I think you saw that. And you look at, conversely, with someone like Scott Boland for Australia, who hasn't been playing T20 cricket, who's probably been honing his skills in the nets and working on his length, he was really effective in those conditions. So, really, I think India looked undercooked with the ball especially, and their top order's ageing, and they were exposed.
Yes, they were. Now, Darren, you're backing or laying Shubman Gill's response in his tweet?
The concept of a player speaking their mind, I like, but that was probably a little bit petulant. The tweet was effectively just a couple of magnifying glasses and a face palm.
But is dissent speaking your mind, Darren? Like, he's dissenting
Exactly.
against an umpire.
That's exactly
I'm happy
right.
for players to have opinions.
Yeah.
And Shubman Gill could have said something constructive, like, I think this law
Spot
needs
on.
to be looked at,
Yeah.
and I'd like some clarity around it from the
Good.
ICC. But
Yeah.
actually disparaging an umpire, I think it was very poor.
And
I was very
the timing
surprised.
of it.
Yeah, and I was very surprised to actually find him, because usually the BCCI might have the ICC over a barrel, but he got 15%.
Well, I mean, that's nothing. I mean, that's pocket
right.
change.
Exactly. But there's speaking your mind, like Glenn McGrath coming out saying, Trescothick's my bunny in this series. I've got him covered, and poke the bear and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, that was a bit more petulant. And given the way some of the passionate Indian supporter base can react on social media, it was like
Well,
a
they
moth
have.
to a flame, really. It was like, here, guys, unload. And unfortunately, poor old Cam Green copped it for what is a catch that is always given out, to be honest.
He controlled
So,
it. That's the
yeah.
rule, isn't it? You
Yeah.
have to control it, and
Yeah.
he did.
His fingers were clearly under the ball.
Yep.
There has been some confusion for casual fans because we've seen in the past those not given out. But my understanding is the umpires have been recently instructed that if you think the fingers are under the ball, that is a catch and you have to give it out, whether the ball touches the grass or not. And I'm sure some fans weren't aware of that. But for Gill to add fire to the flames and further heap pressure on the umpires is very unprofessional.
I agree, and as you said, the Indian Twitter and social media, and there's an avalanche. I'm laying the way India responded to their defeats. They came out, Gill did that, laying that. They've made excuses. They were talking about one test, it should be three, which I tend to agree with, but whether they can fit that in the schedule. But everything they're saying, why is it in June? Shouldn't be in England.
Yeah, but I mean, the counter argument would be you win the toss and bowl, and the opposition makes 450. Probably hasn't gone to plan. So
And you don't pick your best bowler.
exactly. So
I still can't believe they didn't pick Ashwin.
yeah,
It's an interesting point, though, about a longer World Test Championship. And Tom, I'm sorry, but I think you're way off on this one. You're way off on this one because what you have with a one test is everything's on the line. It's a marquee match and you have to get a result. If you play a 3-test series, you might get 2 tests where they're just happy to take draws because they know, well, you know, the title is decided. We only need to win this series 1-0. So that could actually make the test matches not good to watch because you'll be petrified of losing.
Yep.
Or the opposite, you know, one team gets steamrolled and the series is over.
So, Manners, are you backing or laying the World Test Championship as a series?
I am laying.
and I tend to agree with that. It's interesting if you look at the way the fixture is structured. So South Africa, as we saw in the home summer, aren't a great side at the moment. They're clearly transitioning. But if you look at the next block of matches, the only home series they play are against all of the Asian nations, so Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India. So with the exception of India, they'd be a very good chance of winning all of those home series. But then you compare it to, for example, teams like Australia who will tour England, India, New Zealand. You know what I mean? Like it's a much tougher passage through that might end up leading to an inferior side making the final.
I couldn't tell you how they come up with this, the point system. There needs to be a higher emphasis on who you're playing and the away series wins as well.
Yeah.
Do you know how it's calculated?
Well, it's basically percentage of matches you win.
Yeah.
So your teams play different amount of matches, but then they just take it back to that sort of win-loss ratio.
Yeah, right.
And I don't mind that the championship does reflect the vagaries of Test cricket.
Yep.
And being a good Test nation, you're going to be tested in different conditions. And if you're in a 2-year patch where you're touring a lot and playing tough teams, well, that is how you prove your medal as a Test side.
True.
And that is why Pat Cummins' team, despite my criticisms of his leadership, should be commended for the fact that they went to Sri Lanka, Pakistan and India, where normally we've been smashed, and they've gone through that and qualified and won the final.
So they're clearly a good side, Australia. To be a great side, they need to win an Ashes. And if they can do so away, it is going to be vital to Cummins and the team, and it will be a legacy for this team. We've got 5 tests. Let's get to the Ashes. 5 tests. Edgbaston, Lords, Headingley, Old Trafford and the Oval again. 2019, amazing series. Probably the best series of cricket since 2005.
2005, unbelievable.
Ashes.
Yeah.
Australia obviously retained the Ashes in 2019 in England, 2-2 series. So the first drawn series, Dan?
First drawn series since 1972. And remarkably, I don't know exactly when, but the first time in a long time, it's the same 5 venues in a row.
Yes.
So
correct.
usually they mix it up a little bit, but the 5 from 2019 are the 5 from this series as well.
So I've got some notes on last 2019
Mm-hmm.
series. Ben Stokes obviously scored 135 not out, led England.
One of the great Test match wins.
One of the great wins. The betting we'll get to in a minute
Mm-hmm.
on that test, phenomenal. But Leach made himself a hero. He made 1 not out, didn't he?
In a partnership of about 70 or something. You know.
Phenomenal. Steve Smith missed the 3rd test due to concussion, obviously. He amassed 774 runs, missing a test, average about
And missed half another test as well.
110 average, or 111 really, in only 7 innings. So that was amazing. Jofra Archer was huge in that series. England are without him this series. He took 22 wickets. Pat Cummins 29 wickets, leading Australia and the series wicket taker markets. Test 3 we talked about. Australia traded $1.03 at various points in that test. Unbelievable. And the series betting in that test 3, Australia traded $1.26 to win the series as well. And obviously it became a 2-2 draw. So what a series, what a test match that was.
Just an incredible series in 2019 on the back of that 50 over World Cup. It was really set up and it delivered. And that Stokes performance changed the series. Looking at the odds, you can see had Australia gone on and affected the win there, they might have come back with a 3 or 4-0 series victory. But I think if you look at some things from that tour, you can look at some of the odds and think, well, you know, Marnus Labuschagne came into the side in 2019 and performed really well, and he's going back a much better cricketer now. So he could be really effective at number 3. And also in 2019, Australia rotated their bowlers around. I don't know if you remember, but Peter Siddle came in. Stark only played 1 test. And I just wonder how much of that tactic they'll use in this upcoming series.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of rotation.
Yeah, and obviously they made that error at the toss in the 5th test, which denied them a realistic chance of winning the series outright. But great response from Australia to have a demoralising defeat like that in the 3rd test and then immediately win the 4th. But it was interesting.
With that 5th test, when apparently Tim Payne was walking out to the Oval and everyone in the Australian camp thought he was going to win the toss and bat. And Nathan Lyon was in the dressing room. Payne comes back and says, "We're bowling." And Lyon goes, "Oh, so you lost the toss?" He goes, no, I won the toss. And Lyon just stood there in shock, like not comprehending what had happened. So it was one of the all-time stuff-ups from an Australian captain.
Bizarre.
Yeah, well, obviously we saw Ponting do that after losing McGrath in 05. But you spoke about Steve Smith before. I found it amusing that when Jofra Archer was ruled out of the series, because he was the one that concussed Smith, where they said, Smith will be glad he's not there. He's got the pace to trouble him. He'll be breathing a sigh of relief. And I think Steve Smith made the point, only averaged 111 when he was there. So good thing he's not.
Bring it back. 2021, 2022 series, obviously. Just go through some player markets as well for that series. Australia dominant. Travis Head leading series run scorer for Australia and the series. Joe Root, England's leading run scorer. Wicket takers, Pat Cummins did it again. So he not only did it in the 2019 Ashes, but the 2021-2022 Ashes as well. Mark Wood was England's leading wicket taker for that series and Pat Cummins' series leading wicket taker as well. We'll chat about the teams, but before that, I want to get the series odds. So it starts Friday the 16th. The series, Australia have been well backed ever since before the World Test Championship final against India, but even more so on the back of their dominant display there. They're at $1.98 to around $2 at the moment. England, $2.62. Drawn series, $7.80 to $8 around that price as well. Let's get to the teams. I'll start with you, Menners. Australia go in as they did in the Indian Test?
I think so.
I agree with that.
I don't think they will change the bowling attack. I think, as we discussed before, the fact that Boland, Cummins and Stark had that run in the Oval, it makes sense to take them into the first test and save Hazelwood as your sort of Ferrari that you might bring out of the garage midway through the series.
Not a bad replacement, is he?
He's very, very good in English conditions. But so I think they have to stick with the same team. But Stark is probably the one under the most pressure because he leaked a lot of runs and it could get ugly if the England batters really go after him.
He's the point of difference. He's the left-hander. Obviously, Australia's quicks are similar in what they do. You've got Neser, obviously, who perfect for English condition, who's had an amazing county cricket lead up as well. He's been in form, but The Australian bowlers, what a lineup it is, Darren.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I did see over the last couple of days, I think Pat Cummins described Scott Boland as his favourite player in the world. So I think he wants him in his
He
team.
said he's now my favourite, and then he corrected himself.
Yeah, then he said he always has been. But, so I think he wants him in his lineup. But yeah, Boland seems perfectly suited for English conditions. And yeah, Stark, you look at what, Mitch Johnson was at times patchy in England, Brett Lee was at times patchy in England. Those real aggressive quicks can at times be a little bit loose, but obviously he's got the body of work behind him to also trouble that English side, who have got a couple of stars who haven't played against Australia before. That's kind of epitomised Bazball, like Brooke and Duckett and players like that. Can they do it against Australia, having never played an Ashes test before?
The most fascinating thing about this series is how Bazball and the aggressive style of cricket can actually face up against the likes of Lyon, Cummins, Hazelwood, Nisa, Boland, the lineup.
Yeah, I guess one strength that Stark has is the unknown factor. So when the Bazball batters are lining up, Cummins, Boland, Hazelwood, they'll have a pretty good idea of what they're going to face. But with Mitchell Stark, you don't know if you're going to get a Yorker at the base of the stump.
An unplayable Yorker.
Yeah, or you're going to get a wide short ball that your eyes might light up, but you end up hitting it straight to a fielder. So he does bring a sort of unknown element. But I think Boland and Hazelwood and Lyon are going to really find it challenging. Because I think they'll be messing with the length England batters. You'll see them batting out of their crease. You'll see them charging the bowlers. I mean, we've seen it. Stokes come out and just charge the quickest bowlers in the world to put them off their length. And I'm sorry, but that does something to you as a bowler.
Yeah.
I before we get into the England squad, that's a huge query for me for Australia, and that's the biggest challenge. How they react, and we saw it even in 2019 when Stokes was going mental in the third test at Headingley. Australia panicked. We saw Lyon drop balls. We saw a miss out line of Langs. Their reviews were awful. Australia need to stand up and actually stick to what they know, stick to their line of length, and actually hopefully have learnt from what happened in Headingley in 2019. But England squad, Crawley and Duckett to open the batting minutes.
Yeah, well, that could go either way. But I think that just overall with the England side, Australian fans look at that 2021 series. But England are
it was a void series, according to Broad.
Well, yeah, but their players have vastly improved since then. And I think Ben Duckett is one of those players at the top of the order that has really come on in leaps and bounds, averaging almost 50 in the last couple of years at the top of the order. And he and Crawley are the X factor at the top. They could score really quickly. I think throughout the series, opening batters are going to struggle. So I actually think it's a good idea just going with two positive players and try and take the attack to the Aussie bowlers. But then, Ollie Pope at number 3. So if you're the Aussie fast bowlers, you'll be looking at Crawley, Duckett and Pope thinking, we can make inroads here.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that thinking. You may as well make some runs quick, because I think if you try and survive with the new ball as well, and we heard Warner come out as well saying he's got to be a bit more positive to Broad. He's got to play his shots. England's mentality and Bazball's mentality is if you're going to face 100 balls and get out, you may as well be on 70 rather than being on 20.
Yeah, and if you look at the difference between their squad when they were out here in Australia, so they had Hamid opening the batting and really struggled. Burns, who's more of a solid, stodgy opener. David Milan batted at 3, so none of those guys are there. Joe Root, obviously, the anchor at 4 with Stokes and Pope. They had Butler keeping wicket, which will now be Bairstow, who's actually been in, apart from the injury, been in pretty good recent form, and against Australia has been okay at times. So that's a very different look. But yeah, I mean, we saw them against Ireland. Admittedly, it's Ireland. They made 550 at 7 and over. They declared on the first day of a test match in New Zealand. So Australia have just got to be prepared for the fact that the game's going to rollick along at 1,000,000 miles an hour. If England get a good hour, they're going to be 2 for 180 at lunch, that type of thing. And Australia just can't panic if they look up and think, geez, that's got away from us. And understand that they're always going to be a chance because of the way that England are approaching it.
Yes. Now, what's the bowling lineup for England?
So Anderson and Broad, you'd think would obviously front up
test
when fit. I doubt they'd play every test in this series.
No, they'll be rotating heavily.
Yeah, how fit's Mark Wood? And obviously Moeen Ali, I think, Menners, is the interesting one because if you lined up Lyon versus Leach, Lyon has the better credentials and clearly he's the superior spinning option to Moeen Ali.
Yeah, it's a very big hole to fill for England. And what does it say about English cricket that, Leach is
Yeah.
ruled out and they're going to a guy that's been retired for almost 2 years at this form of the game? So if I'm a county spinner, I'm feeling pretty dirty right now, plying my trade, not getting picked. So I do think, though, Ali has had a knack in the past of picking up annoying wickets against Australian top orders. Because, again, like the England batters, they'll go after Ali. And sometimes that doesn't work out too well for Australia, especially you look at sort of Head and Green at 5 and 6, probably not proven players of spin, but still the drop off between Leach and Ali is quite appreciable. It does lengthen the batting order.
Yeah,
and
it
then
does.
when
It
you're
does,
playing
yeah.
Bad's ball, that is actually a factor. If you know Ali's coming at 8,
Yeah, helps.
that really helps because if he comes in at 8 and scores a quick 50, that will frustrate the Aussie bowlers.
Well, when England last hosted the Ashes, Moeen Ali played the first test, took 3 for 172, then that was in England, then got dropped for 16 months. So he needs to do better than last series.
Yeah, he does. And it reminds me of that 09 series, which England ended up winning. But I remember there was talk in that series that they were going to bring, I think it was Mark Ramper.
Why did you bring that up?
Out of retirement. I know, it was a messy one. But it seems to be every time we go to England, there's talk of an ex-English player coming back somewhere along the way. And obviously it has happened a few times. But yeah, Ali overall, 195 wickets at 36.6, which is not terrible by any means. But against Australia, with the ball, 20 wickets at 65. So has struggled to penetrate against the Aussies.
So who plays in the bowling lineup for England? Is it Wood? Is it Robinson? I assume Broad and Anderson have to play the first test. Who gets that third quick?
My feeling is they'll go Broad, Anderson, Robinson to start. They'll have Ali, they'll have Stokes. I think that'll be the 3 they'll lead off with.
It's a worry for me. And with the new ball, England have come out and said they want to prepare flat pitches, helps Baz ball. If they don't take wickets early, I can see Australia's middle order really piling on the runs, keeping in the field. They lack a genuine quick that can put pressure, bounce if Mark Wood's not there, to bounce Smith out, put pressure. Obviously, they set fields to his leg side, and Travis Head was susceptible to the short ball. They probably bowled too full to him early in India, or in the Indian Test match. So that's my biggest concern with England's bowling lineup. If they don't make early inroads, Australia could get on top in the middle order.
One of my big concerns for England, and I don't have many, but I don't have many concerns generally around England, but Stokes' left knee.
Yes.
How much can he bowl in this series? It's dodgy. If that first test his knee just gives way, maybe he can still play, but he can't bowl. That is going to significantly shift the balance of the England side because then they'll probably have to try and squeeze another quick in. And that means maybe Ali goes out and you're playing 4 quicks with Joe Root as your off spinner. That first test, just watch how much Stokes bowls. He's a tough character. He'll load up on the painkillers, but him being able to bowl, 15 overs like Cam Green will put these teams much closer together.
I think Cam Green's the biggest wild card and an advantage Australia has over England. He'll bowl a lot. He comes from 6'6". He gets bounce. I think he plays a significant role in this series.
I think his role with the ball is decisive because I think the England batters will target Nathan Lyon. And in a 4-man attack, if you target one bowler and effectively hit them out of the attack, you get a massive advantage. But that will be impossible with Cameron Green because Pat Cummins will just send Nathan Lyon to deep square leg and he'll sit out there for a while and he can rotate the 4 quicks through. And that gives Australia real flexibility because I think England will come at Lyon hard. The pitches are dry, the outfields are small. They're going to want to hit him out of the attack.
And he's not the same player as Flintoff, but if we go back to that famous 05 series, another one we lost.
Didn't have to bring that up again.
But it feels like Australia have been
Who invited
looking
you?
ever it feels like
89 or 93 or 97, 2001.
97 was a favourite, but method in the conversation in that I think ever since that series, Australia have looked to go back to England and bring that same level of firepower, which they haven't been able to do. That series kind of changed Australia's approach a little bit. They had Watson after that, they had Andrew Simons, McDonald played, they've had a numerous, Mitch Marsh obviously being another one. And I think now this is the best chance they've had at actually almost revisiting that and saying, well, now we've actually got the artillery to do that ourselves, to have a fire, like a real fire and brimstone all-rounder that can bowl pace from height and can bat really aggressively. For the first time, really, since then, we've been equipped to handle it.
Just don't mention a substitute fielder. I won't bring up 2005 either.
Cam Green is going to finish up with a record significantly better from Andrew Flintoff.
Yes.
And you talk about Australia looking for an all-rounder for a long time. If you look back at Watto's figures, they weren't bad as an all-rounder.
They weren't bad, yeah.
He got marked pretty hard for his batting, but actually put the whole package together. But, this Ashes summer from Cam Green can actually be such a defining moment in his career. We've seen so many Australian players go to England and really announce themselves on the world stage. This is the spotlight. It's huge test for him. But I think with the ball especially, he's going to be vital.
Well, his confidence to be up with those two catches, sensational catches. He made 100 in the IPL in a fantastic knock as well.
Wasn't one hand, one bounce, that catch?
Made 100 in India as well, his first Test century. So,
correct.
Yeah.
Let's get to some markets on Betfair and we'll get through some tips as well. Now, I'm very bullish on Australia's chances and I'm happy to be on them at that $2 mark for the series.
Good value.
You agree?
Yeah, because Australia are going in red hot form. Conditions are going to favour them. I think they're good value.
Biggest test for England with the Bazball with this bowling lineup. I'm concerned, as I said earlier, that Australia's middle order, if they don't take early wickets, they'll come in at 2 for 120 and England's bowlers will be tired. It'll be a flat pitch. The seam's not as pronounced this series. They've come out and said that, which is fascinating as well. So a little nuance with the Duke ball. But I'm very bullish about Australia's chances here and I'm happy to be on them at $2, Darren.
And you can play around with some of those series series score lines as well. Like, for example, Australia 3-1 is $8, 3-2 is $7.40. If you're really brave, 4-1 is $11. If you thought there'd be a couple of draws because of weather, 2-1 is $20 at the moment. So if you felt Australia could win, you could look at 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, 4-1 and just say, how do I think it'll go? Assuming that Bazball gets going and England win at least a test somewhere along the way.
I'm happy to be on in that market, Australia 3-1. I think England will get a test. Australia have historically got a bad record in dead rubbers as well. So if the series is over, I wouldn't be surprised if we lose a test. Which way are you leaning? Series score?
Yeah, 4-0 Australia at this stage. I think it's going to be...
That confident?
Yep.
22s you'll get on that at the moment.
All the mail I've got is the weather's good, the pitches are hard. My biggest concern was if Australia gets over there and it's been raining in May and June and we're served up, green tops.
Yes.
But all the mail is the weather's good and also, and we wouldn't know this being Australia, maybe in Melbourne you do, but the Arctic winds has actually dried out a lot of the grounds in England. So that combined with the sun has meant it's actually good for Australia's batting. Hard wickets.
Are you surprised England are preparing these pitches dry and fast and hard? Because I think that, like to your point, I think it plays into Australia's chances.
Sort of, but I think they are so insane. They just think their Bazball is going to work. So they know that really they need, you need good batting pitches. Just go at the Aussies. And Harry Brook,
Yes.
I mean, if you send Harry Brook out on a green top, I guarantee you just mark him down for a duck or thereabouts.
But I'm almost the other theory that if they can get a quick fire 200 on a green top, they can roll Australia for 150.
Well, that's where I'm coming. I agree, but I think McCullum and Stokes are so obsessed with his Bazball. I'd be doing what you're saying. Prepare green tops, try and bowl in the first session.
And if you're aggressive, it comes off and you make runs. Where do you sit in the series?
Yeah, I'm thinking similar as well, that I think the conditions suit us. I think generally when we've gone to England, even when we've lost series, we've stacked up better than, if when England lose in Australia, they lose 4-0, 5-0. When we lose in England, we lose 2-1, 3-2.
Yeah.
We always equip ourselves a little bit better over there in the head-to-head anyway. And look, I think the Bazball will work occasionally, and they're certainly going to win a test, I would think. But I think Australia overall, on the balance of probabilities, will take it.
Darren, Australia haven't won a series outright in the UK or in England since 2001. So it's been a while.
Yeah, that's right. And England have only won the one on the road in that time as well. So the home side has generally been dominant. But obviously, 2005 we won a test match. 2009 we won a test match. 2013 it was 3-0, but we were pretty competitive. 2015 we won 2 test matches. And then obviously we drew the series in 2019. So we've been far more competitive there than they have been here. So that augurs well.
So, Menners, you're four zip Australia's way. You were
3-1 with
I'm with
potentially
you.
a draw.
I think 3-1. I think back end that we might get a draw. Obviously, the last test at the Oval, notoriously flat, dry deck. Obviously, we've had a test there already, so that's going to be interesting. Anything else to say on the series point of view from a betting perspective?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think you look at the Australian team, and the obvious ones for sort of most runs are Smith and Marnus, because they're Marnus and Smith at 3 and 4. But I wouldn't be discounting someone like a Travis Head or a Cameron Green, because there will be early wickets falling, you would think, and there'll be big opportunities to score runs against the soft Duke's ball, because you're right, they've reduced the seam and it gets a bit softer after 30 or 40 overs, so it's harder to bowl with.
I just think England's bowling lineup will just lack substance and lack pace 40, 50 overs when Australia are on top. I just think Smith and Labuschagne will dominate, and Head will come in at 5 and make runs and makes runs quickly. England will accelerate the game naturally, and it's going to make for a fantastic series. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I like that middle order value. I think Mark Taylor in 89 was the last opener to be the leading run scorer. Generally, obviously, there's a bit of vulnerability at the top. So, yeah, I do like the Travis Head mark. Given the form, too, obviously just made a huge 100 in the World Test Championship final.
I would high bat Australia. I'm happy to lay Khawaja and Warner there. So Khawaja's $8.
Outrageous, Tom.
Well, Khawaja's $8.40 and Warner's $11. So
yeah, Warner averaging 26 in England, averaged 7 on the last tour.
Correct. And Travis Head, obviously coming off a brilliant man of the match performance. He made the most runs in the Australian Ashes, so he's flying at the moment. I'll bowl a bit shorter to him, which would be interesting. So, my play for the high bat for the Australians, lay the two openers. We almost concede the openers, and any runs from the openers are bonus.
But then counter to that, and I see where you're coming from. Hard wickets, Warner looked okay in that Oval
First
Test
innings,
match. I think if he has a good series, then it actually just throws England out. Like if he comes out and starts
100%.
batting well, that could just blow England out of the water. Because I think they're expecting a tough series for Warner and Khawaja, but maybe it won't happen.
Yeah, they're probably banking on 2 for 30, 2 for 40 most times. So yeah, if it doesn't go that way, then big trouble.
Well, Stuart Broad's 9th Ashes series. He's dismissed David Warner 14 times in Test cricket. Last series in England, he bowled 104 balls to Warner and took 7 for 35. So safe to say Warner's his bunny. It's going to be really interesting, but you make a fantastic point. If Warner makes runs, Australia win. It's as simple as that. If Australia are 1 or 2 for 150 in Test matches, there you got Smith, Labuschagne, Head, Green coming in, Carey's in form. And you won't get out to a reverse sweep with no spinner for England, really. So
I know he's played a lot of Tests, Stuart Broad, but and I know we bash him around a little bit, but he's taken more Ashes wickets than any Englishman ever.
amazing.
So it's worth at least momentarily pausing to respect that and then moving on.
So many nightmares about Stuart Broad. I mean, people talk about 2015, but you mentioned 2009 before. I mean, he bowled an absolute corker of a spell at the Oval when the series was on the line. He was a youngster, very, very young, and he took a 5 for, knocked Australia over, and that should have been Ponting's legacy series victory in England that he never got. So he's a thorn in Australia's side. And I've got to say, I really admire the way he sticks it to us.
I like it.
Yeah.
If he's a player you'd love to have on your team.
Absolutely. He doesn't take a backward step. And you talk about players with opinions. There's someone that's happy to have an opinion. If he's dropped, he'll say, he's upset about it. So he's actually a very admirable character. And I just hope we see him in that first test because everyone wants to see Broad to Warner. That is such a showpiece matchup.
We always have that memory of the non-walking when Ago had him caught at slip.
Correct.
And obviously the long memories from that. But yeah, players speaking their mind, even him saying that the previous series was void, that type of poking the bear. Probably deep down doesn't believe that to be true, but just digging the elbows in a little bit.
I like it. That's good gear. High bat England. We've got Joe Root. It's about that $3 mark. Betfair. Harry Brook, $5.90. Ollie Pope, $5.80, $7.40. You're just shaking your head, Dennis?
Just Harry Brook, $5.90. That's
short?
Yeah, very short.
Is it just simply Joe Root, or do you give someone like a Stokes coming in later, or even a Bairstow at 7 that can make runs?
It's possible, but I can't mount a compelling case against Joe Root, to be honest. I mean, it's possible, but I just think that the uncertainty around some guys that haven't played. Crawley has been in good form, but we saw him struggle a bit against Australia. So, it's an unfriendly market, I think that.
Losing the captaincy has been the best thing for Joe Root, and he's even admitted that Ben Stokes is doing a better job than him. He's averaging 61.94 under Ben Stokes compared to previously when he was averaging 46.44. So I agree with you. I think he's the player I want to be on, Menace.
I agree. I mean, he's head and shoulders the best batter in England. And not only is he the best batter, he's like Steve Smith, has the ability to score 4 centuries in a series. You know, he just likes to bat and bat
He's
and
the
bat.
rock as well.
Exactly. But I do think in that market, Ollie Pope would be one to look at. Very good technique. He's improved a lot in the last 2 years. Obviously made a big double 100 against Ireland, so comes in with a lot of confidence. So I quite like him. I think he's a much better bet than, say, Harry Brook, who I think could really struggle.
And obviously Pope's been elevated up the order a bit, which gives you more time at the middle, decent chance to build some runs.
So that's the Hobart England market. I think we're all in agreement that Joe Root will be very, very hard to beat there at about that $3 price, betfair.com.au. Most wickets, going to be really interesting. Obviously, so much will change test to test with the bowling lineups. Pat Cummins, leading wicket taker last series in England with 29. He had the most wickets for Australia as well when they last met in Australia's dominant display. I can't go past him here. I think you'll get about 340, 350 betfair.com.au. Cummins for you, or?
I mean, he's the clear favourite. Maybe Nathan Lyon, who might play the whole series.
Yeah, so you'd think Cummins will play 4, if not 5.
Don't write off Scott Boland.
Do they rest him?
I don't think they do. If he starts the Ashes well, he's the type of bowler who can run in. I mean, you've seen him for Victoria. He will not run out of gas by the end of the series. He's so economical, the way he bowls. I think if he starts well at Edgbaston, they're going to have real troubles removing him from the side.
Well, that's exactly what happened in the World Test Championship final. He's performed and you can't drop him off that. He's got that, obviously he's played on a hard MCG, slow, low wicket. He's had to tune his craft to bowl so accurately, and it holds him in great stead for England conditions.
Yeah, it does. He just seems perfectly suited. I'm glad, obviously, that he was in the frame for that Indian Test match to cement his spot, so to speak. And yeah, I think in terms of rotations, he'd be one they'd be reluctant to rotate. But Cummins, if the series is tight the whole way through, then he'll play every game, and he just takes wickets for fun. So I think definitely he'd be the play on that one. Just on the top run scorer from before too, I just noticed you can have the overall run scorer market, so putting both teams in the market.
Yes.
So Joe Root, whilst he's 290 for England, he's 620 overall in the series with Steve Smith at 360. So Steve Smith about half the market for Joe Root. So even though Smith is slightly more likely, I think there's a bit of value in Joe Root to outscore everyone potentially in the series.
That's a great call because
Don't mind that.
Joe Root might have to hold that
Exactly.
batting line.
He's the rock in their side, as we said earlier.
600 runs for Root, but England lose 4-0.
Exactly.
That'd be good.
It's certainly possible. Certainly possible.
Correct. When England are 9 for 200 and Root's on 100.
Well, he's the less, I guess, temperamental of the batsman who's not going to just blaze his way out and,
Hits a lot
he'll
through.
bat properly, so to speak.
Hits so much through backward point and gully.
Yeah.
He did that all Australian series. It's very annoying for bowlers, I would have thought. And they didn't put a third man in for a lot, and he scored so many runs.
And he was a broken man on the last Ashes tour here, but I got to close to him at the SCG before that test. You could just see his eyes. He looked like dead inside. It was weird.
Let's get to this. We've got a market to retain the Ashes. Australia obviously need to draw or win is a bonus, but all they need to do is draw the series here to retain the Ashes. They're about that $1.55, $1.60 mark. I think they'll do that. I think at worst they'll draw the series, and I think that's value at $1.60.
Yeah, if you're going to back England, leave that market alone though, because at the moment England to regain the Ashes are $2.12. To regain the Ashes, they have to win the series, and to win the series, they're $2.60. So don't touch that, touch the other one, because you're effectively
work-
betting on the same thing.
Work out which odds
So,
are better.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, that market will change to retain the actions
based
a
on,
little bit there.
based on
Liquidity and
yeah.
whatnot as we get closer. First test. Let's get to the first test. England $2.44, Australia $2.34. The draw $5.90. Manners, I think you might have laid the draw. Your co-host Paul laid the draw in the Australia versus India test. I'm against the draw again here. I think Australia. It's going to be interesting who bats and bowls first, but England will want to stick to their guns early. They want to prove everyone that Bazball can work, and I'm happy to be against the draw again.
Yeah, I think the big difference, I guess, from the World Test Championship to this is there's no reserve day, so that they can't play a 6th day. And so English weather could meddle with this, but I think
Forecast looks okay.
the way Stokes plays, they are going to might be declaring on. They might declare a tee on the first day, and so you would be crazy to back the draw.
There you go. I'm happy to lay the draw again.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Australia value at $2.34, considering they're $1.99, $1.98, $2 for the series.
Well, I guess if you are adamant that it won't be a draw like me, then you can't lose backing both in many respects.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just lay the draw.
Shrewd over there, Darren. I like it. I'll be calling you after this.
Finds a way. Well, so in the India-Australia test, I laid the draw, Australia dominant position, and I thought there was only 2 results. I thought it was draw, but I was still against the draw, and I backed Australia then. So it's a good trading strategy there. You can lay off, work, get a position in the market, and then back according to.
What did the draw get into? About
$2.80.
Yeah, when Australia were 300 on the first day, they thought, oh, maybe it's a road, and India will make 1,000 as well.
I was saying this to Bennett. Australia couldn't have been in a more dominant position. If you said to Australia, no, give us your perfect day one in a test match, they would have said 4 for 350.
Yeah.
Close enough too. That's what they were, and they only firmed 10 cents.
Yeah, and every Indian top order batsman averages, I think, less than 30 in England. So you were like, well, fair chance we'll cash in. So.
And they're all coming off IPL cricket.
Yeah, that's right. So.
Just on the first test, I think it's worth noting that this is one of England's favourite grounds to play at.
Yes, and that's why Australia are 234 and not shorter, because obviously then go to Lords, where Australia have held the edge.
At times, things have gone wrong for Australia at Edgbaston historically, whereas Lords we've dominated. So.
But if you look at 2019, that was the match where Smith scored those 2 centuries, a famous victory for Australia. But the crowd there, they'll be baying for Australian blood. So it is going to be, it's a great place to start the Ashes, that sort of vibe. But yeah.
Before we get to the new ball, Darren, I'm going to give it to you for your betting strategies. Dennis, you want to talk about the fielding?
Yes.
Because it is going to be of vital importance as it is. Australia, you'd think a great fielding side, but may have let them down recently.
Yeah, so one of my concerns with this Australian side is I think the 1%ers, they don't do right anymore. So
Especially under pressure.
under pressure, but you look at the wickets off no balls from Cummins, you look at dubious selections, you look at not knowing the rules in the world. Reviews. You know, I don't think McDonald ticks those boxes in the way Justin Langer used to.
No.
And I know, because I've heard the players say, that a lot of training now is optional, especially during matches and stuff. And you can see during the last 2-year cycle, Australia's catching rate, I think, was 75%, which was the 3rd lowest among test playing nations. Now, if Bobby Simpson saw that, the former Australian coach, he would be throwing stuff at the TV. Australia normally are the best catchers in the world. And my concern during the Ashes is there'll be a lot of catchers going to slips. Who have you got there? Warner, Smith, Khawaja. Well, we know how good Smith is, but I've got concerns about the other 2.
I agree, yes.
And if it is a tight series, dropping 25% of the chances could be decisive.
We haven't seen the slips Corden and Alex Carey yet in sync. We saw Warner drop that catch to his left, which you shouldn't see in Test cricket, any cricket, with the wicketkeeper not going for the ball when it goes to the first slips left. I agree with you totally. West Indies were amazingly first on that list. The best fielding side in Test cricket.
Probably because they only generate 3 or 4 chances an innings. So
Well, that was-
it's
that was
easy to
my
go
next-
at 90%.
That was my next point. Is it harder, is Australia's record worse because they're slipping to Stark, bowlers of 140 plus? Do you reckon that has an impact?
No, has McDonald paid you to say that?
No, I'm just,
of
that was the
course not.
first thing that sprung to
No,
mind.
no.
Is it harder to...
My only theory would be if the West Indies are bowling the opposition declares at 4 for 497, and they took the one chance they had, then their
Yes.
record's 100%.
That's a fair
So-
point,
I'm
Darren.
surprised they're not asleep in the field, to be fair.
Yeah.
That's another point. Okay, Daz, take the new ball. What are your betting strategies?
So the betting strategies would be not just the series win, but to find value in a score. So either 3-1 at $8 or 3-2 at $7.40 for Australia. That's probably the better play. And I like that Joe Root to lead all comers in the series based on the spread that Australia will get. So 620 for him to score the most runs in the series.
So it might even be a trading strategy
Yep.
there as well.
Yep.
You can bet throughout the series and lay off at some point when he's short on the 620. So good one from you.
Like it.
First change, Menace.
First change, betting strategies.
Yes, you got any?
Well, not really. I've sort of outlaid them all in this
Yes.
chat, but
Yeah.
I'm bullish about Australia's chances. So I will be going in on like the 4-0 because I think Australia's due for just to walk over England. And this team is due for it. This is a legacy piece. So I don't think they'll take the foot off the throat. I think if they get the ascendancy early, Bazball will crumble, McCullum will resign, Stokes' knee will give way, and, we'll leave England 4 or 5-0, cock-a-hoot.
$22 on the 4-0.
There you go, Menace.
Super-
Jump on
super
Betfair
price.
for $22. My betting strategies, I'm very bullish Australia. I think they win the series. I'm happy to take $2. I think that's a great price. I think they're in form. I think they come with a better grounding than England, and I'm really worried about England's ability against Australia's bowlers. I think they'll get the upper hand. I'm with you, 3-1, 3-2, Australia more 3-1. I think there might be a draw, and Australia can drop a test, especially if it's dead rubber. They've got a history of that. Pat Cummins, most wickets, Australia, $3.40-ish. Happy to take that. I could save on Nathan Lyon, so play around those two there. Australia to retain the Ashes at $1.60. I'm happy to take that price. I don't think they'll get beaten in this series. They could draw it, but I think they'll win. So $1.60 there, and I'm laying the first test.
What about a smoky for the most wickets, Cameron Green?
Yeah.
When we talked about bowlers playing all test matches, unless he gets injured, he might play all 5 tests, and he might take the ball at first change.
It's a good price there. He might. Yeah, he might there. And I'm laying the draw in the first test as well.
Just
so.
on Mina's prediction, when Australia have played well in the Ashes, they've generally smashed England. So, and when they've won in England, 89 4-0, 93 4-1, 2001 4-1. So when they get hold of them, they get hold of them. So not too bad.
Love it. Look forward to texting you guys at 1 a.m. over the next 6 weeks, guys.
Yes. Can you remind me of all my dodgy predictions in those
No,
text
you'll
messages?
be rich. Gamble responsibly. Thank you for joining us. It's been a
Thanks,
real
Tom.
highlight to have someone of your knowledge in the game. You've been doing it for 10 years. Give a shout out to your podcast again. Where do they tune in?
Yep, subscribe to Cricket Unfiltered on your favourite podcast app. And if you're in Sydney, we're doing a live show on October the 14th to celebrate 10 years of podcasting. So come along to that. It's at the Factory Theatre.
Brilliant. I might get on the plane.
Absolutely.
Look, well, I don't know if we're invited yet, but we'll see. Everyone else is, but we might not be. We'll see how we go. Thank you so much, man. It's been
Thanks,
a
Tom.
pleasure. Darren, been a pleasure. We're going to do this throughout the series.
Looking forward to it. It's Christmas time for the cricket fan, that's for sure.
We'll do short little cricket trade talk prior to every test match. It's been a pleasure. Stay tuned. Enjoy the cricket.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.